Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. The emergency phone buzzed at 2:47 a.m. When you're the director of FEMA, late-night calls aren't rare. Hurricanes, floods, wildfires, power grid failures, you name it. But this one was different. It came through the secure red line, reserved for top-tier threats. Only 2 people besides me had that number. "Director Maddox, this is NORAD Command," the voice said, level but urgent. "We've got a developing situation near Fort Detrick. High-priority biohazard breach, multiple facilities, possible exposure event. We're escalating to DEFCON 3. I sat up in bed, the cold sweat already forming at the back of my neck. Fort Detrick was a top-tier research installation. If something got loose from there, it wasn't just some chemical spill. I asked the only question that mattered. Is it contained? A pause. Unknown at this time. I was out of bed before the call ended, throwing on my field uniform. My wife stirred. "Trouble?" she asked, groggily. "Could be nothing. I'll call you later," I said, already halfway out the door. I boarded a Blackhawk 30 minutes later. The sky was still dark over D.C., stars fading behind fast-moving clouds. As the blades chopped the air, I reviewed the initial reports. All were vague. Personnel missing. Radio silence from multiple zones. Rapid shutdowns. Then one detail froze my blood. Containment teams hadn't checked in. They were overdue by hours. We landed on the FEMA helipad in Maryland. The Emergency Ops Center was already a hive of activity. Dozens of analysts, field commanders, and intel officers packed inside. I walked into the control room as a giant wall screen flickered with maps, satellite feeds, and security footage. "Give me the sitrep," I barked. Deputy Director Nguyen pointed to a red cluster forming on the map. "We've got something spreading across Frederick County. Civilians are panicking. Law enforcement's reporting bizarre attacks, people biting each other, violent behavior. But here's the strange part. They're not going down even after multiple rounds are fired." I stared at the screen. "You're telling me they're not responding to injury?" "Sir," Nguyen said, swallowing hard. "They're getting back up." I wanted to say it was nonsense. Urban legend, some new synthetic drug making people act out of control. But then they showed me the drone footage. A man, no shirt, covered in blood, stumbled down a street. His arm dangled at an impossible angle. A local officer shouted for him to stop. When he didn't, the officer fired. 1 round, then 2, then 3. The man fell, but then got up again. Limping, twitching, charging. The feed cut out in static. The room was silent. Then someone whispered, "What are we dealing with?" Nobody answered. I turned to Nguyen. "Get the CDC and military command on this line. Full biohazard protocols. This could be a Tier 1 pandemic scenario." She nodded, already dialing. 10 minutes later, we were on with the president. His voice came through calm but tight. "Maddox, I'm authorizing emergency continuity plans. This is looking like worst case." "Yes, sir," I replied. "Do whatever you have to. I'll deal with the political fallout. Just keep this from spreading." Easier said than done. By 4:12 a.m., we lost contact with Frederick City entirely. Radio blackout, cellular silence. A highway patrol dashcam picked up horrifying images. Vehicles flipped, people running down the interstate, some getting pulled down by others moving like animals. I issued Executive Order 14200. Martial law in Maryland. Full containment. No one in, no one out. We had 4 hours to stop it. 4 hours before this nightmare reached Baltimore, or D.C. But deep down, I already knew. We were too late, and the sun hadn't even risen, but Frederick was already lost. We watched it unravel in real time from our command center. Every camera feed went from chaos to black. Drones sent in for recon lost signal within minutes. The last visual we had was from a Maryland State Police chopper, hovering above a grocery store parking lot swarming with them. At first, it looked like a crowd fight. People pushing, grabbing, swinging. But the longer we watched, the more unnatural it became. The way they moved, the way they ignored pain, the way they overwhelmed trained officers like a crashing tide. Then the chopper began spinning. One of them had latched onto the skid mid-air. The pilot's screams were the last thing we heard before the screen turned to static. I turned to Nguyen. Pull back all remaining assets. Nobody enters that zone without my authorization, understood? Understood, Director. We moved to Level 1 emergency response. That meant direct coordination with Homeland Security, the Pentagon, and key state governors. But the more layers we pulled back, the worse it got. Hospitals were already full, not just with wounded, but with cases of sudden aggressive behavior. Some victims had bites. Others showed no signs of injury until they collapsed, only to rise again minutes later, unrecognizable, like something inside them had broken. Worse, reports were no longer just coming from Frederick. A shopping mall incident in Gaithersburg, a mass brawl at a truck stop on I-270, a sudden blackout in Rockville. And then the word nobody wanted to say came out of someone's mouth. Outbreak. I knew what had to happen. We activated Operation Iron Ring, a classified emergency plan for major biological events. It involved coordinated lockdowns across cities, bridge closures and roadblocks, turning the highways into choke points. All major cities within a 100-mile radius were put under shelter-in-place orders. Sirens blared across the map. Alerts went out to millions of phones. Shelter, do not travel, await further instructions. But we couldn't control the panic. People flooded the roads anyway, thinking they could escape. Highways became parking lots. Tempers flared. Accidents mounted. And through that gridlock came the ones who had already turned, spreading it further. At 6:25 a.m., we received the first confirmed infection inside a FEMA containment zone. One of our own field agents, Agent Herrera, was working with a mobile response unit near the outer edge of the red zone. She radioed in, her voice shaking. "We've got a breach. Civilians came through the fence, one bit no, attacked a responder. He's changing. I don't know how else to say it. He's not breathing, but he's moving." We told her to evacuate. She didn't make it out. When the military unit arrived, they found the van overturned. Blood inside, no bodies, only footprints. The president called again. "Maddox, are we still calling this a bio-event or do we call it what it is?" I hesitated. "I think we're past the biohazard stage, sir." "Then what is it?" I didn't want to say it. It sounded ridiculous, fictional. Something from a midnight movie, not a government briefing. But I had to. Reanimated aggression syndrome. Highly contagious, fast-acting. It spreads through bites, maybe through contact. Once infected, the subject loses all cognitive function. Their only instinct is to pursue and attack the living. There was silence. Then the president said, "Quarantine the Potomac perimeter. Nothing crosses that river. If DC falls, it's game over." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Yes, sir." As I stood before the wall of screens, watching neighborhoods go dark one by one, I thought of my wife, my 2 kids, my home in Arlington. I hadn't even had time to call them. I picked up my secure line, dialed her number. She answered on the first ring. "David, what's going on? The news." "I don't have long. Lock the doors, board the windows, take the emergency bag from the garage. Do not go outside. Not for anyone, not even the police. Understand?" She paused. "You're scaring me." "I know. But you need to listen. I don't know how long I can keep this contained." A soft breath. Then, "We'll wait. We'll stay inside. Just come home when you can." I couldn't promise her I would. Back at command, our screens lit up again. This time, it wasn't Maryland. It was Philadelphia. A single word appeared in red letters on the feed. "Outbreak confirmed." And that's when I realized this wasn't just a Maryland problem anymore. This was the beginning of something much bigger. Something unstoppable. By 7 a.m., we had full-blown chaos on both sides of the Potomac. We'd lost Frederick. We were losing Rockville. Gaithersburg was unresponsive. Now Philly was joining the list. And every minute, the red zones on our map crept outward like bleeding ink. The outbreak wasn't just spreading, it was accelerating. I stood in front of a digital wall plastered with satellite feeds and body heat scans. Major population centers showed intense activity, people packed together, panicked, moving without direction. But within each red cluster you could see the movement start to flicker. Pockets would dim, then fade. Gone. I knew what that meant. Someone turned, and the people around them didn't make it. At 7:12 a.m., the Secretary of Defense patched into our secure call. His voice was steel. "We are recommending the full mobilization of National Guard units across a 4-state perimeter. All infected zones are now considered kinetic." He didn't have to say it plainly. We knew what kinetic meant. "You're authorizing live engagement?" I asked. "Anyone showing signs? We don't have time to screen. It's the only way to slow this." My throat tightened. This is going to be seen as martial law. People will fight back. We know. But if we hesitate, the cities fall. You want another Frederick? No, I didn't want another Frederick. But something about this felt wrong. Like we were always 2 steps behind swatting at smoke. I pulled Nguyen aside. "We need eyes inside the hot zone. Something we're missing. Something's not lining up." She nodded. "I'll get a drone team in the air." "Not drones," I said. "People. I need boots on the ground. Someone who can observe without being seen. Someone who doesn't panic." She blinked. "You want to send someone into the middle of that?" "Yes. Someone who knows what they're looking for." That someone was Special Agent Brielle Knox, a former Army recon officer turned FEMA intelligence asset. Cold nerves, clear eyes. She'd been embedded in Frederick before contact was lost. If anyone was still alive inside that city, it was her. We sent a coded transmission, shortwave only .Knox, "If you're out there, respond. Your country needs your eyes." No reply. Meanwhile, the CDC was still scrambling for answers. Samples from the early victims showed something strange. "This isn't a typical pathogen," their chief virologist said. "It's fast, almost too fast. Once it enters the bloodstream, it heads straight for the brain and overrides neural function. But here's the kicker, it doesn't stop there." "What do you mean?" "It restarts the body, dead tissue, no heartbeat, no breathing, and yet they move. We've never seen anything like it. This isn't just a virus, it's a hijacker." A hush settled over the room. "Can it be cured?" "We don't think so, not once the subject turns." The words hit like a sledgehammer dot. Then someone asked the question on everyone's mind. How did it start? That was the billion-dollar question. The official theory was a biohazard breach. A new strain being studied at Fort Detrick got out. But we weren't sure how. Accidental. Sabotage? Something else? But then we intercepted a strange signal coming from inside the red zone. Not radio, not military. It was encrypted, looping, and using an old NATO cipher, something no civilian should have had access to. Nguyen ran the sequence through 3 decryption engines. Eventually, we got a partial translation. Protocol Eden initiated. Stand by for Phase 2. Phase 2? What was Phase 1? My phone buzzed again. A call from a contact at Langley, someone I trusted. "Maddox," she said, whispering. "There's chatter. Some think this isn't a breach, they think it was released. By who? We don't know, but whoever it was, they knew exactly how this would spread. The airports, the highways, the panic. It was planned. Why are you telling me this? Because if this goes global, FEMA becomes the face of failure, and someone will need a scapegoat." At 7:49 a.m., Agent Brielle Knox responded. Her voice came through cracked, weak, but alive. "This is Knox. I'm in Frederick. Still breathing, still human. You won't believe what I've seen." "Can you extract?" I asked. "Negative. I'm boxed in, but I found something. Something buried in one of the research sites. This wasn't some accident, Director. Someone buried the truth in concrete." "What kind of truth?" Then static. The line died. I turned to the team. "Send a Black Ops team to retrieve her. I don't care what it takes. She's priority 1. A fresh red circle appeared on the map. This time, it was DC, the capital. I stared at it, heart sinking dot. We were out of time. At 8:03 a.m., we lost contact with the National Guard unit stationed at Key Bridge. They were supposed to hold the Potomac line, prevent anything from crossing into DC, but when their body cams cut out mid-transmission, all we could do was wait. The footage recovered from the feed before blackout showed shapes moving fast through the early morning fog. Shadows darting between burned-out vehicles, climbing over barricades like they weren't even there. Then came the screaming, followed by silence. We rerouted all available forces to the Virginia side, but it was too late. The breach had already happened. Inside FEMA HQ, the tension was nuclear. The floor buzzed with chatter, phones ringing, keyboards clacking, officers shouting orders over handhelds. I stood at the center of it all, numb, watching everything we'd built unravel in real time. Then a call came in from the Pentagon. "The Capitol building has been placed on emergency lockdown. Secret Service is moving executive personnel to a secure facility." That meant the president. They were going dark. I wouldn't hear from them again unless everything completely collapsed, or unless I did. It was just us now. Nguyen approached, eyes wide. "We've got another signal from Agent Knox." She played it over the loudspeaker. "Ah, still inside the hot zone. There's a hidden lab under the university hospital, locked behind biometric scanners. Whatever they were doing down here, it wasn't sanctioned." I leaned in. "How do you know?" "Because it's not just infected in here. I found a containment pod. Empty. Looks like something escaped weeks ago. This wasn't an accident. It was a test, a field test." My stomach turned. Knox continued. "They tried to bury it, burned records, wiped drives. But I found a sample, sending image now." A grainy photo came through. Metal canister, marked with a black triangle and a number. E7. Underneath it, Eden Protocol do not deploy outside zone. They had names for it, labels. That meant intent. I called Langley again. "Have you ever heard of something called Protocol Eden?" The voice on the other end froze. Then, "Where did you hear that?" from someone still alive inside Frederick. Silence again. Then the voice said, "Shut down all open channels, now. You weren't supposed to know about that." Why? Because Eden wasn't just a protocol. It was a last resort program. Something designed to simulate post-collapse response. The kind of thing you test in war games, not real cities. You're telling me this was a drill? No. I'm telling you, someone turned it into one. You need to disappear, Director, before they make you part of the cleanup. Then the line went dead. I didn't have time to process it. Alarms flared across our screens. DC breach confirmed, a tech shouted. Multiple civilian casualties. Emergency services overwhelmed. And then the unthinkable. We've got movement inside FEMA headquarters. The building shook, not from an explosion, but from something slamming into the main entrance. A flood of agents raced to the lower levels to lock down the first floor. I grabbed my comms. All personnel, initiate protocol gray. Burn all data, wipe servers, destroy classified material. We're evacuating. Nguyen turned pale. We're evacuating our own HQ? If they know, we're on to Eden. We're not just a target, we're the top of the list. I watched the monitors one last time. Philly, Baltimore, Frederick, now DC. Each red zone was growing, touching, blending together. I realized we weren't fighting a series of outbreaks anymore. We were watching the formation of a new kind of map, a territory drawn not by borders, but by what was no longer human. We left through the subterranean tunnels beneath FEMA. I took only what mattered. One secure laptop, a burner sat phone, and a sealed file labeled Operation Echo Tree. Nguyen was with me. She didn't ask questions, just followed. We emerged 3 blocks away where a black SUV waited, engine running. I didn't know who sent it. Inside, a man sat in the front seat. Black suit, no ID. "You still breathing?" he asked, not turning. "For now," I said. He handed me a note. One line. "You've got 5 hours until the next wave." "Next wave of what?" I asked. He started the car. "You'll see." The black SUV moved fast through back alleys and blocked roads, guided by someone who seemed to know every shortcut out of DC without hitting a single checkpoint. He didn't say much, neither did I. But I kept staring at that note. "You've got 5 hours until the next wave." What was the next wave? I had guesses, none of them good. At 8:46 a.m., we entered a secure underground parking facility just outside Arlington. There were no signs, no cameras, and no guards. Just a steel elevator with a keypad. My driver entered a 6-digit code and handed me a second note. "Take the elevator, alone." Nguyen and I exchanged glances. "I'll wait," she said, tightening her grip on her sidearm. I nodded, stepped into the lift and descended in silence. 30 seconds down, 30 seconds across, then ping. The doors opened. And I walked into something I thought only existed in briefings I was never cleared to read. The room was concrete and steel, buried deep beneath the earth, humming with power. There were 5 people waiting for me, all in suits, all older. Faces I recognized from news reports and photographs. Men and women who officially didn't exist anymore. They were the ones you didn't meet unless the country was already gone. One of them stepped forward. "Director Maddox, we've been watching your response." "How?" I asked. He gestured to a massive wall of surveillance feeds. Eden Protocol wasn't designed to fail. We knew someone on the inside would eventually start asking the right questions. Congratulations. That someone was you. "What is this? What are you really doing?" He gave a small smile. We're doing what FEMA was never allowed to do. Control a collapse instead of just respond to it. They showed me a timeline, maps, graphs, projections. Phase 1. Release the agent into a controlled urban zone. Observe rate of spread, host reaction, and media containment. Phase 2. Monitor the failure of conventional responses. Time the moment government infrastructure fractures. Phase 3. Deploy clean teams to reclaim key assets and personnel once urban centers are deemed unrecoverable. I stared at them in disbelief. You designed this to spread? No. We designed it to teach. This country has grown soft, slow, vulnerable. We needed a shock to wake it up. By wiping out cities, they'll be rebuilt, smarter, stronger, and those who survive will be the kind of people we need in the next version of this country. I wanted to hit something. Why tell me this? I asked. Because we need you, he replied. You've proven adaptable, calm, decisive. FEMA's public image will survive this better than any other agency. You could shape the narrative. Be the bridge between what was and what's coming next. You want me to help sell this? No, we want you to help finish it. The next wave begins at noon. It's an electromagnetic disruption package. It'll disable the last remaining communication networks for 72 hours. Total blackout. The old world ends at 12. I stepped back. You're going to shut down the entire grid? He nodded. By the time it comes back on, people won't be looking for rescue. They'll be looking for order. You'll be that order. I said nothing. Not at first. I just stared at the monitors. One showed Frederick, another showed Baltimore. The third showed DC, each one bleeding red, the heat maps flickering with motion. People were still alive in there, screaming, fighting, trying to survive. And these people, these planners, saw it all as acceptable loss. I turned to leave. We'll be in touch, the man said. I didn't reply. I just rode the elevator back up, stepped out into the garage, and nodded to Nguyen. Drive. She asked nothing, just took the wheel and hit the gas. We were 10 minutes out when I finally spoke. I need to get to a broadcast station, somewhere that's still transmitting on analog. Why? She asked. Because they're going to turn off everything digital in a few hours. Once that happens, nobody will know what's real and what isn't. She frowned. You're going to expose them? No. I'm going to warn the survivors, the ones still moving, still hiding. They need to know what's coming. Not just the infected, but the people behind it. And then what? Then we disappear. We reached an old repeater station near an abandoned suburb outside Manassas. I climbed the tower myself, Nguyen keeping watch below, and bypassed the rusted emergency panel. I powered up the analog transmitter. Short range only, but enough to reach whoever still had a working radio. And I spoke. If you're hearing this, you've survived the first wave, but this isn't over. At noon today, everything goes dark. Power, internet, phones. This is no accident. This was designed. Get somewhere safe, stay low, trust no one who tells you help is coming, because it isn't, not yet. The people behind this want a reset, a new order, but they weren't counting on you. Stay alive. We fight at night. The wind howled through the broken tower as I cut the feed. I climbed down. Nguyen was already scanning the horizon with binoculars. Helicopter incoming, she said. Military. No insignia. They'd found us. The chopper circled once, just high enough to avoid a clear shot, then peeled off toward the north. Nguyen tracked it through her scope. Recon, not an attack team. Then they're confirming I'm still breathing, I said. Why not just take us out? They want me alive, for now. We didn't wait for round 2. 30 seconds later, we were back in the SUV and headed west, deeper into the country, away from cameras, away from tracking towers, away from them. We took back roads, gas station alleys, cut across old trails that hadn't seen a vehicle in years. My goal wasn't to hide. It was to reach the only people left who might still believe in the idea of rescue. At 9:40 a.m., we arrived at a decommissioned FEMA training facility buried beneath an abandoned airfield. Most people didn't know it existed. That was the point. Inside were 4 people I trusted. Veterans, ghosts, people who had walked away from the machine when they saw what was coming years ago. One of them was Callahan, former urban response commander, tough as nails and twice as paranoid. "You're late," he growled, handing me a mug of stale coffee. "The country's burning, you're just now asking for help?" "They started the fire," I said, "and they're about to shut down everything else." I showed him the note from the suit. "You've got 5 hours until the next wave." His eyes darkened. "EMP? Worse. Controlled communication blackout. Once it hits, survivors will be stranded. No news, no truth, just fear." Callahan looked around the room. "Then we better give them something to hold on to." We split into teams. Our goal was simple: hijack broadcast towers. Shortwave analog, emergency channels, anything they hadn't already locked down. Every tower we activated became a voice in the dark. Every message we sent gave hope to someone still alive, still hiding, still fighting. Nguyen's voice was the one they heard most. "This is FEMA Unit Echo. If you can hear this, you are not alone. The system has failed, but we haven't. Shelter where you can. Avoid the roads. Move at night. Help is not coming from above. It's coming from you." We never used names, never gave locations, but people started responding. Distorted voices crackled back across the airwaves. "We're still here." Holding at an old diner in western PA. Got 12 people with us, kids too. Hope, fragile as it was, had a signal again. At 10:26 a.m., we intercepted a different kind of broadcast. Encrypted, bouncing through satellite uplinks we weren't supposed to access anymore. It was marked, Operation, Black Talon, Scheduled Strike List. I decrypted it slowly, line by line. Targets weren't military, they weren't even government. They were community shelters, makeshift hospitals, places where survivors had gathered. They were going to erase them. "Controlled collapse," I whispered. "No uncontrolled groups, no unauthorized hope." Callahan leaned in. "They're wiping the chessboard." Nguyen shook her head. "Why?" "Because they want a clean slate, no stories, no witnesses." We knew we couldn't stop the blackout, but we could delay the strikes. We rerouted false coordinates, jammed targeting signals, faked evacuations, and in a few cases warned people to scatter before the drones arrived. It bought us time, not much, but enough. At 11:42 a.m., the earth beneath our feet rumbled. A deep, static pulse buzzed through the walls, then the lights flickered. Power died. Phones went dark. Satellites vanished from the sky. The next wave had hit. Outside, the world had gone silent. No engines, no air traffic, no sirens. Just wind. And distant, low howls that didn't come from anything living. I checked the analog radio. Dead air. Then, "This is FEMA Echo broadcast. We are still here. If you can hear this, respond. We are still here." It wasn't us. it was someone else. A survivor tower. Callahan looked at me. You think it's real? I nodded. Only one way to find out. We packed up, took what we could carry, set coordinates toward the signal. One last run before total nightfall. One last mission. As we pulled out of the facility, I looked back at the empty runway. The sun was slipping behind the hills, casting long shadows across the fields. We had less than an hour before the things that thrived in the dark came back out. And now, with the grid down, no one would stop them. No help was coming. We were the help. We drove in silence, guided only by the signal. Weak but consistent, repeating every 20 seconds. FEMA Echo broadcast, alive, repeat alive. Coordinates encoded in signal. The landscape had changed. Not physically, at least not yet, but in feeling. The power grid was down, and with it, the heartbeat of civilization had stopped. No streetlights, no hum of traffic. Just long stretches of rural roads, broken fences, abandoned vehicles, and skies that looked too still. At 12:22 p.m., Nguyen pointed out a trail of smoke. Signals coming from that direction. Could be a trap, Callahan muttered from the back. Or someone trying to survive, I said. We don't get to be cautious anymore. We left the SUV at a tree line and moved on foot. The signal led us to a small radio relay tower just outside a collapsed farmstead. Wind turbines still turned on a distant ridge, but none of them fed power anywhere anymore. Underneath the tower was a shack, reinforced, barricaded. Whoever set this up had military training or close to it. I knocked once, then again. No answer. Nguyen stepped forward and called out, "We're FEMA Echo Response. Not infected, not hostile." Silence. Then click. A peephole opened. "Password?" came a hoarse voice. "We don't have one," I said. "But if you let us in, we can give you the truth." A long pause. Then the door opened. Inside there were 3 people. 2 men, 1 woman, all armed, all exhausted. The man who had opened the door was in his 50s, wearing a weathered flight jacket with a patch I hadn't seen in years. Cold War-era communications squadron. He looked me over. "You're the voice from earlier." I nodded. "We heard you," he said. "So did a lot of others. Been getting replies from all over. Even someone out of Chicago. They said your broadcast gave them the push they needed to leave the city." "You've been relaying?" "Non-stop, every frequency we can reach. Rotating channels, low power. Been running off solar and backup fuel, but that blackout wave fried most of our longer-range gear. We're down to shortwave and analog loops." Callahan stepped forward. "How many others like you?" "At least 9 confirmed towers still running. Maybe more. Some are mobile. Ham operators, rogue responders. They're all calling it the same thing now." He reached into his coat and held up a small card with hand-scrawled letters. Echo Tree. Nguyen tilted her head. "What's Echo Tree?" "It's what people are calling the network," the woman said from across the room. "The people still talking, still broadcasting, the ones they didn't count on." The man nodded. "You planted the roots. The rest of us? We're the branches." I looked at that card and realized, for the first time all day, that something we'd done had worked. Not completely, not cleanly, but enough. Enough to start something. But time wasn't on our side. "We have maybe 2 hours before airspace is theirs again," I said. "We intercepted a schedule. Drones, strikes, cleanup teams. They'll be looking for towers like this." He nodded slowly. "Then we keep moving." "Not just moving," I said. "We connect them. Echo Tree can't be separate branches anymore. We need one signal, one truth, going out everywhere that hasn't gone quiet. Nationwide, as far as it'll reach. Callahan looked at me. You sure about this? They'll trace it back to you. That network goes live. They'll come after you first. They already are, I said. But it's not about me anymore. It's about everyone they didn't expect to survive. We got to work, pulled cables, repaired transceivers, boosted the antenna with parts from the SUV. At 1:31 p.m., we transmitted. One voice, one signal, Nguyens again. This is FEMA Echo Tree. If you can hear this, you are not alone. Repeat, not alone, stay moving, stay alert, stay free, we are survivors. We are signal, we are not done yet. We looped it, synced it with the other towers still online, pinged every corner of the spectrum we could reach. Then we packed up the shack and burned it to the ground. Why burn it? Because the drones would come, and if they didn't find us, they'd find the broadcast point. A fire would make it look like we were already hit. We left nothing behind but smoke and static. By 2:12 p.m., we were on the road again, heading southwest toward the mountains, toward other Echo Tree nodes. That's when the real message came in. Encrypted, old military cipher. We cracked it in under a minute. To Echo Tree, they know. Full cleanse operation en route to Appalachia region. Airstrike estimated by nightfall. No survivors expected. The mountain shelters. The ones where people had gathered after the cities fell. Where the last fires still burned. I gripped the wheel, my jaw tight. They're going to erase them. Then we get there first, Nguyen said. No, I whispered. We warn them, we scatter them, and then we make them hear us. We drove without stopping. Through back roads, over washed-out bridges, skirting fallen trees and burned-out wreckage. The signal was fading, but not gone. At 2:45 p.m., we crested a ridge overlooking a narrow valley in Appalachia, one of the last holdouts. Tents, campfires, tarps strung between trees, a small community of survivors. Dozens of people, maybe more. Children played near a stream. A makeshift triage center sat under a blue canopy. Someone strummed a guitar by a fire pit. It wasn't a fortress, it wasn't a stronghold, but it was alive. Callahan stared through the binoculars. They don't know. I checked the decrypted message again. The strike window was tight. Between 3:30 and 4 p.m., we had less than an hour. We pulled in fast, no time for diplomacy or slow introductions. The moment people saw our FEMA tags, panic hit. No, we're not here to take over, I shouted, holding up both hands. We're here to warn you. Some backed away, others stared in silence. But one older woman stepped forward. Then tell us what we need to know. We gathered them fast, leaders, medics, anyone willing to listen. Nguyen played the intercepted message through a speaker. Appalachia, region, full cleanse, estimated strike window, 1530 to 1600. The crowd went quiet. Then someone asked, why? We're not hurting anyone. They don't want survivors, I said. They want control. If you're not part of their plan, you're in the way. A man near the back called out, so what do we do? You scatter, now, in all directions. Quiet, fast, no electronics. Break into small groups, no roads. Use cover. Stay hidden for the next 12 hours. Nguyen stepped up. If you can't move fast, dig in, but get off the ridge. No open fires, no signals. They started moving immediately. No debate, no second guessing. That's how you know survivors. By 3:15 p.m., the valley was nearly empty. Those who stayed behind did so on purpose, to help others, or because they couldn't go. I stayed too, not because I had to, because someone needed to make them see. We climbed to the peak and set up the last antenna we had, short range, analog, low band. Wired it into the SUV battery, linked it to the portable transmitter, aimed the dish high. Callahan tuned it in. Nguyen looked at me. "You're sure?" I nodded. "It ends with this." She hit record. "This is FEMA Director Michael Rourke. If you're receiving this, you are not listening to fiction. You are not lost. You are not powerless. They took the cities. They took the airwaves. They took our trust. But they cannot take the signal. To those who are hiding, keep hiding. To those who are moving, don't stop. To those who are building, who are helping, who are fighting, you are not alone. We are Echo Tree, we are the roots, and this world still belongs to us. If I don't make it, remember one thing. They only win if you give up. Stay human. Stay free. Stay loud." Rourke out. We locked the loop and triggered the auto broadcast. Nguyen and Callahan bailed to the west with the evacuees. I stayed to make sure the message kept repeating. At 3:29 p.m., I heard it. A hum, like a hive of metal insects. Drones. Fast movers, high altitude, no sirens, no warnings. They were coming. I pulled my chair up beside the transmitter and stared at the clouds. My fingers gripped the antenna base as if I could keep the signal alive by force. The first streak of light broke the sky at 3:33 p.m., followed by two more. They lit the ridgeline like sunrise. But the valley was empty. The people were gone. And the signal was still playing. That was the last moment I remember clearly. When I woke up, everything was ash. But the broadcast tower, bent, burned, blackened, was still upright. A faint light blinked red. It was still transmitting. The world had changed, but the message was alive. It's been 12 hours. I'm not in charge anymore. There's no FEMA to direct, no flag to salute, but the people who heard me, they're still out there, still building, still surviving. And the signal, our signal, still echoes across the dark. Because survival isn't about orders. It's about choice, and I choose to fight, even now, even after all this. Because I know someone out there is listening. And I want them to know you are not alone. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.